whispering mirror. It began with a chance encounter. Emily was driving through the countryside when a small sign caught her eye. Estate sale, antiques and curiosities. Intrigued, she followed the winding dirt road to a decrepit old mansion. The house stood like a relic of a forgotten era, its windows fogged with grime, and the air heavy with the scent of mildew. Among the dusty relics and worn-out furniture, an ornate mirror caught her attention. The mirror was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its frame was carved from dark mahogany, twisted and shaped into grotesque faces that seemed almost alive. The glass itself was cloudy, yet it held a peculiar depth, as if inviting her to peer into another world. The elderly woman running the sale noticed her fascination. "That mirror has a story," the woman said, her voice rasping like dried leaves. "Some say it shows you more than just your reflection. Be careful with it." Emily smiled politely, brushing off the ominous warning as part of the mystique. She purchased the mirror for a modest price and brought it back to her small apartment in the city. She placed it in her bedroom, its dark frame a striking contrast to her modern decor. The first night she dreamed of shadows. In her dream, she stood before the mirror. Her reflection stared back, but its movements didn't align with hers. It smiled when she didn't. Its eyes glittered with something predatory. When she awoke, her room was dark, and the mirror was veiled in shadows cast by the faint glow of the streetlights outside. She shook off the uneasy feeling and went about her day. Over the next week, the dreams became more vivid. In one, her reflection spoke. "Do you like what you see?" it whispered, its voice a distorted echo of her own. In another, it reached out as if to touch her, only for Emily to awaken drenched in sweat. By the fifth night, the whispers began while she was awake. It started softly, barely audible over the hum of her apartment. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder, insistent, calling her name. "Emily," they hissed. She began covering the mirror with a sheet, but the voices penetrated the fabric, echoing in her mind. One evening, unable to bear it any longer, she uncovered the mirror and demanded, "Who's there? What do you want?" The glass rippled like water. Her reflection's eyes darkened, its features twisting into a grotesque parody of her own. "You brought me here," it said, its voice low and menacing. "And now, you'll take my place." Emily stumbled back, knocking over a lamp. The room plunged into darkness, save for the faint, otherworldly glow emanating from the mirror. The reflection stepped forward, pressing its hands against the inside of the glass. The carved faces on the frame seemed to writhe, their expressions shifting between agony and glee. Desperate, Emily grabbed the nearest object, a metal candlestick, and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered with a deafening crash, shards scattering across the floor. The room fell silent. For the first time in days, Emily felt a sense of relief, but the relief was short-lived. The following night, she noticed something unsettling. The shards of the broken mirror, which she had yet to clean up, reflected not just her apartment, but dark, shadowy figures moving within them. Every fragment seemed to hold a different piece of another world, one filled with writhing forms and hollow-eyed faces. One by one, the shards began to disappear. At first, she thought she had misplaced them, or perhaps her cat had batted them under the furniture. But soon, larger pieces vanished. Then the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. "Emily, come back," they called. On the seventh night, Emily's apartment became a prison. Every reflective surface, her bathroom mirror, the dark screen of her television, even the glass of her framed photographs, showed glimpses of the shadowy figures. They pressed against the glass, their hands smearing it with dark, oily stains. And always at the center of the reflections was her own twisted likeness, grinning with malevolent delight. The final confrontation came when she tried to leave. As she reached for the doorknob, her hand froze. The metal felt like ice, and her reflection in the doorknob's polished surface winked at her. The room grew cold, the air thick with the smell of decay. The shadows poured out of the glass surfaces, coalescing into a towering figure with hollow eyes and a grin that stretched impossibly wide. "You can't leave," it whispered. "You're mine now." Emily screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive silence. The last thing she saw was her own reflection, stepping out of the shards of the broken mirror, whole and unblemished, as it walked toward her with outstretched hands. When her friends came looking for her days later, they found the apartment empty. Every mirror, every piece of glass was gone. The only clue was a single shard of the